What is up, everybody? Welcome to my YouTube channel, Broken Hungry, where I'll be cooking up all my favorite dishes better than the restaurants do. In this video, I'll be making some succulent and delicious fall off the bone baby back ribs. The first thing that I'm doing is I'm giving the ribs a nice little pat down just to get rid of any of that excess moisture, as I don't want them to be too slippery. One of the most important things to do when cooking ribs is to make sure you take off the membrane on the back. If you leave that on, when you go and eat the ribs, it's going to be very tough. It's not going to be that enjoyable. So make sure you always take that membrane off. An easy way to remove the membrane is to stick the knife under the corner of the ribs and release a little piece of that membrane. From there, all you got to do is grab a paper towel and use that to pull the membrane off. Just look how easy that was. It came right off. If there's any little pieces left afterwards, just go back and pull off any of the remaining pieces. It'll be pretty easy. Once you have removed that nasty and disgusting part of the ribs, feel free to trim some of the excess fat if you want. But remember, I say fat is flavor, so don't go overboard with that. This last little piece was really giving me some problems, but you can't be afraid to get your hands dirty in the kitchen. After you have cleaned your ribs up nicely and they are pristine, I prefer to cut my racks in half so that they're easier to handle on the grill. These ribs will be extremely tender, so I find when leaving them as a full rack, they sometimes break apart when you have to flip them on the grill later on. Don't do what I just did and start cutting the bone, it's never gonna work. The bone is tougher than my knife. Once all the ribs are cleaned up nicely, I like to add a little bit of a dry rub to the ribs just to put in some more subtle flavor into the meat. In this dry rub, there's about 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, 2 teaspoons of paprika, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, and 1.5 teaspoons of cayenne pepper. Once you have all your spices in a bowl, give it a good mix so that they're all well incorporated. All that I'm doing here is sprinkling some of our delicious dry rub and rubbing it into the meat. Make sure you rub the spices in well, as you want it to be able to penetrate and give it all the flavor it can. After all the ribs are coated with the spice mix, put your ribs in a big pan, bone side down. Don't worry everybody, I'm not getting drunk in the middle of this video. I'm just going to add a little bit of beer to our ribs. To make the ribs really tender, I like to add a little bit of liquid into the bottom of our pan. You can use water, but I prefer to use beer as I find that it adds the most flavor. When choosing a beer to use, I like to use a dark beer as they tend to be more flavorful, but you can use pretty much any type of beer that you want. Just slowly pour out your beer and try to coat all the ribs as best you can. You should have about an inch or so of liquid in the bottom of the pan after you're finished. I gotta make sure I get every last drop out of that can. I'm going to cover the tray with some aluminum foil to trap in all the heat to make sure the ribs get nice and tender. Once this is all done, your ribs will be ready to go and you're ready to start cooking. The ribs will be placed in the oven for approximately 3 hours at 300 degrees Fahrenheit, but you can leave them in a little longer if you have some bigger ribs. After 3 hours, your ribs are done cooking and you can remove the aluminum foil. Be careful though when you're doing this, as all the trapped heat will be escaping and it'll be really hot on your hands. That's what happened to me here. Look how good these look. They're extremely tender at this point. Now we are on to the final step of the cooking process, where we will be putting the ribs on the grill. Ooh wee, just listen to that sizzle. That's the sound you want when you put the ribs on the BBQ. You want to have your barbecue on a pretty high heat so that it will give a nice char on the outside of your ribs and add some delicious flavor to them. At this point, your ribs are already fully cooked, so I'm just putting them on the grill to give them a nice color and to add my sauce on. For sauces, I'll be using a homemade delicious cherry glaze for some of the ribs, and then just a normal barbecue sauce for the remainder of the ribs. The cherry glaze will be a stickier sauce, while the barbecue sauce will be more wet. You can use whatever type of sauce you like, it's all just personal preference. When adding your sauce on, you just want to be continually basting onto the ribs. I'll be flipping my ribs probably about 3 or 4 times throughout the whole cooking process on the grill and adding a layer of sauce on every time. I'm going to speed up the video a little bit and skip ahead to the end. The whole cooking process on the grill will probably take about 10 to 15 minutes in total. And that is the finished product. I am starving at this point and ready to eat. Thanks everybody for watching. I'll be coming out with a lot of new content. If you guys liked the video, please drop a like and subscribe.